My mother was buried on a Tuesday. I found out on Wednesday, through a Facebook post, from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Every single member of my family was there. My sister, my brother, my aunts, my cousins, family friends, neighbors. 112 comments beneath the funeral photo. 112 people who knew my mother had died before I did. None of them were me. I was 11 time zones away in Nairobi, running on 4 hours of sleep and a cold cup of coffee, standing in a rural clinic believing my mother was home gardening. She had told me the hydrangeas were blooming early. Those were the last real words she ever said to me. What I did not know, what my entire family had decided, together, I should not know, was that she had been admitted to the hospital 4 days before I left, that doctors had given her between 6 weeks and 4 months, that her decline had been happening for months, documented, witnessed, planned around, while I sent money home every month and covered her insurance premiums and answered midnight calls and showed up every single time anyone needed anything. For 38 years, I was the one who held this family together. They buried her without me, changed her will without my knowledge, redirected $47,840 of my money, and then they waited to see what I would do. This is the story of what I did. Stay with me. Every word of it matters. 11 days into a 2-week medical mission in Nairobi when it happened. The trip was organized through Denver General, a rural clinic outside the city, patients who had never seen an IV bag, let alone a defibrillator. 3 years of savings went into making this trip possible. The paperwork was filed twice because the first application got lost. Every shift was covered. Detailed handover notes left for everything. 2 video calls home during those 11 days. My mother, Patricia Carter, answered both times from her kitchen in Lakewood, Colorado. She looked tired, but she always looked tired. 67 years old, retired school cafeteria worker, slower than she used to be, knees that complained the way knees do at that age. She asked if I was eating. She said Renee had stopped by. She mentioned the hydrangeas were blooming early. She did not mention being admitted to St. Anthony Hospital 4 days before I left Denver. She did not mention the doctors had given her between 6 weeks and 4 months. She said nothing about my sister Renee, my brother Damon, and my aunts Joyce and Carol being called to her bedside. Nothing about the meetings happening there. Nothing about the decisions being made. Real, legal, permanent decisions. While I stood in a rural Kenyan clinic believing she was gardening. The truth arrived the way truths do when people decide you shouldn't hear them directly. A Facebook post. My cousin Tamara. Tuesday afternoon, 2:14 p.m. Nairobi time. A photograph of my mother in a hospital bed, surrounded by flowers, surrounded by family. Renee on one side, Damon on the other. Aunt Joyce and Aunt Carol standing behind them. My mother's hands folded over a white blanket, her eyes closed. The caption read, "Rest easy, Mama Patricia. Heaven gained an angel today. Thank you for loving us so perfectly." That caption required 4 readings before my brain accepted what my eyes were seeing. My mother was dead. She had been dead for 6 hours, and nobody had called me. There are no words adequate for learning your mother has died via social media. Language was simply not built for it. The first second, nothing registers. The brain refuses the information the way a body rejects a transplant. The second, every memory of her arrives at once. The smell of her kitchen, the specific sound of her laugh, the way she said the full name, Simone Elaine, when she was proud of you, like it was a gift she was handing back. And then the third thing, slower than the others, harder to name, the understanding that this was not an accident. Renee picked up on the second ring. That told me everything. She had been waiting. Her voice was careful the way a surgeon is careful when cutting near something she doesn't want to nick. "Simone, we've been trying to reach you. No missed calls, no voicemails, no texts, nothing." 11 days of complete silence while my mother lay dying in a hospital 20 minutes from the house I grew up in. You have my number, Renee. You were overseas. A pause. Mama didn't want to ruin your trip. That sentence sat in the air for a long moment. She was dying. My mother was dying. And you all decided together that I shouldn't know. She was at peace, Simone. It was peaceful. She wasn't in pain at the end. She didn't answer what I actually said. I noticed that carefully. When is the funeral? The kind of pause that has information living inside it. It was yesterday. The funeral was yesterday. Mama had everything pre-planned, Renee continued. A small service, immediate family only. We were honoring her wishes. The floor of my rented room in Nairobi was cold concrete. I don't remember sliding down the wall. Only the phone pressed so hard against my ear it left a mark for 2 days. I am immediate family. I am her daughter. You were gone. You knew where I was. Silence. The will has already been filed with the probate court, she said. Damon was named executor. He had legal authority to handle everything. It's done, Simone. Everything. Was done. This detail matters, so hear it clearly. Damon was the executor, not a passive bystander, the person with legal responsibility to carry out the will's instructions. He chose actively not to call me while our mother was dying. He chose actively to proceed without me. The full weight of that distinction took time to understand, but I would understand it completely before this story ended. 14 hours later, a plane home. Every cent of emergency savings spent changing that ticket. 17 hours in a middle seat without crying once. Every feeling held in the chest like a stone, pressed down, contained. In the ER, triage means you don't treat patients in the order they arrive. You treat them in the order of severity. You assess, you prioritize. You act with precision rather than panic. 14 years of training for exactly this. Every bit of it was about to be used. The house on Larimer Street in Lakewood looked exactly the same. White shutters, red door, hydrangeas heavy and blue along the front porch railing, blooming early exactly as she had said. Someone had placed a wreath on the door. Black ribbon, white flowers. The kind of arrangement you buy when you want grief to look organized. Renee answered the door wearing an expression I recognized from work. The look that appears on families' faces when I walk out of a trauma bay after an outcome nobody wanted. That particular mixture of guilt and defensiveness belonging to people who know they did something wrong but have already committed to justifying it. You made it, she said. As if I had been on vacation. The house smelled like sympathy food. Casseroles and pound cake and flowers left one day past their prime. Relatives I hadn't seen in years filled the living room, watching me with the sideways attention of people who know something you don't. What they knew came out over 3 days, piece by piece. The way rot reveals itself in an old building, press one spot and the floor gives, press another, then another, until the house you're standing in is more missing than present. The will had been changed 16 months before her death, 2 months before the formal diagnosis, during a period when her doctor had already begun noting cognitive confusion in her file. A period when she was vulnerable, but not yet officially protected. The original will, written in 2018, equal thirds. The Lakewood house, the savings account, the jewelry, the life insurance, Renee, Damon, and me. Equal. The new will, arranged by Renee, with an attorney Renee personally referred, signed with Renee present in the room, was different in every way that mattered. The house went jointly to Renee and Damon. The $47,000 savings account went entirely to Renee. The jewelry split between Renee and the aunts. The life insurance, $85,000, a policy I had been quietly supplementing for 11 years at $312 annually because she couldn't always cover the premium herself, went entirely to Damon. The executor, the man who had let our mother die without calling her other daughter. My inheritance was one sentence. To my daughter Simone, I leave my Bible and my gratitude for her many years of service. My Bible. And her gratitude. Here is where the story shifts. In 2022, 14 months before her death, she called me on a Sunday afternoon. Almost didn't answer. Had come off a double shift and the phone felt impossibly heavy, but she sounded like herself, clear and warm. She told me the $14,000 loan given to Damon in 2019, never repaid, would be deducted from his share when the time came. Everything was still equal. The pearl earrings, she said, were mine someday. Because of all her children, I reminded her most of her own mother. That voicemail was saved. Everything gets saved. A habit built from 14 years of hospital work, where documentation is the difference between accountability and chaos. What that voicemail proved: as of 2022, she believed the will was fair, believed nothing had changed. Somewhere between that Sunday call and her death, someone had led her into an attorney's office and changed it, during a window when her mind was slipping, but the law hadn't yet caught up to protect her. The timeline was not a coincidence, it was a strategy. The legal pad came out that night. Not to make it about money, to see it clearly, the way you need an X-ray before you can understand what is broken. 11 years of covered insurance premiums, 3,432 hours, the $14,000 Damon loan, the $6,200 wired to Renee when her car was repossessed, smaller amounts across 14 years, a furnace repair, groceries, medical copays, the midnight calls, the vacation days spent in waiting rooms, documented transfers alone, $47,840. Then the attorney's number was dialed. Andrea Voss, downtown Denver, 14th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows with the full range of the Rockies behind her. Firm handshake, the kind of quiet competence recognizable in any field. The professional who asks rather than declares, listens without performing, never wastes a word. Everything went onto her desk. Both versions of the will, the legal pad, 11 years of bank statements organized by year in labeled manila folders. The phone with the 2022 voicemail queued and ready. She went through it all without speaking. When she finished, she looked up with a single instruction: walk me through the timeline, precisely. So here it is, laid out clearly. The will was changed 16 months before my mother's death. Her doctor had already been noting cognitive confusion approximately 2 months before that change, meaning confusion was present before the new will was signed. The attorney who drafted it had no prior relationship with my mother, was referred by Renee, and met with her twice, both times with Renee in the room. No independent cognitive assessment was conducted before signing. 8 months after the will changed, the formal terminal diagnosis came. 6 months after that, she was gone. And through all of it, diagnosis, decline, final days, death, burial, not a single call to me. Andrea was quiet when the timeline ended. "What is your goal?" she said. "Contesting a will takes a year or more. It is emotionally expensive. The outcome is never guaranteed." What my mother actually wanted, came the answer. What she told me she wanted, in her own voice, on that recording, and a record that shows what was done to her. Andrea picked up her pen. "From the beginning," she said, 7 months of work followed. The details that emerged were precise and damning. The cognitive confusion documented in her medical file began approximately 18 months before death, 2 months before the will change. That overlap was the legal opening. The will's drafting attorney had no documented capacity assessment, no independent evaluation, nothing to establish that the woman signing understood what she was signing. And the voicemail, recorded 14 months before death, after the will had already been technically changed, proved something devastating. She still believed the original wishes were intact. She still thought everything was equal. She still thought the pearl earrings were mine. Her own doctor submitted a sworn statement confirming that, in his professional opinion, Patricia Carter had demonstrated meaningful confusion and reduced capacity for complex financial decisions during the period the will was revised. The legal language for all of this: significant indicators of undue influence and diminished capacity. The plain language. Renee had walked our confused, dying mother into an attorney's office and rewritten her future. With Renee in the room, using an attorney Renee selected, while double shifts were being worked in Denver and money was being sent home and nothing felt like it had changed. What did not happen next matters as much as what did. No call to Renee, no confrontation at Damon's door, no announcement to extended family, no social media post. Renee's occasional check-in texts received 2 words in response. I'm fine. Everyone expected a scene. Dana, who has known me since nursing school, kept asking when I was going to say something. My colleague James said I needed closure. Even my therapist, carefully, gently, suggested that direct communication might help. All of them were heard. None of them were followed. 14 years in emergency medicine teaches one thing above all else, if you are paying attention. The loudest intervention is not always the most effective one. The crash cart and the dramatic measure make every person in the room feel like something is being done. But sometimes the patient doesn't need the crash cart. Sometimes what is needed is the quiet, precise action. The one nobody notices until the monitor numbers start moving in the right direction. So, withdrawal without announcement, no more midnight availability, no more filling the gaps. To the family, simply absent, which was, after all, exactly the role they had already assigned. And in the quiet, the case, built statement by statement, document by document, bank record by bank record, the same methodical precision used when charting a deteriorating patient, every vital sign, every medication, every intervention recorded, so that when the moment of reckoning arrives, the answer is complete and unimpeachable. They had counted on steadiness for years, mistook patience for passivity, assumed that silence meant unawareness. The watching never stopped. That was the only mistake that mattered. Mediation. 7 months after the first meeting with Andrea. Not a courtroom, something more uncomfortable. A neutral conference room in downtown Denver, glass table and leather chairs, chosen precisely because it belonged to neither side. Renee arrived with her attorney, an estate dispute specialist, expensive, aggressive, the kind of man who speaks over people as a professional habit. Damon sat beside her. He had the look of someone who had spent 7 months slowly comprehending that being named executor meant being named responsible, and that responsible had consequences he had not considered when he agreed to sign. The difference between this room and Andrea's office 7 months earlier was everything. Then, the story was being told for the first time to someone on our side. Here, it was being told for the last time to the people who had made it necessary. Nothing needed to be said. The table said it. The 2018 will, equal thirds, in my mother's own hand. The new will, 16 months before death, Renee's attorney, Renee present at signing. Medical records showing documented cognitive confusion beginning 18 months before death, 2 months before the will was changed. Bank statements spanning 11 years, insurance premiums, wire transfers, the $14,000 loan bearing Damon's signature on a repayment agreement he never honored. Then Andrea pressed play on the voicemail. My mother's voice entered the conference room, warm and clear, 14 months before her death, telling me the loan would be deducted from Damon's share, telling me everything was still equal, telling me the pearl earrings were mine. The room was completely still. Renee's attorney wrote something on his legal pad and slid it to her without looking up. She read it. Something in her face went still, the stillness of a person watching an exit close. What exactly are you asking for? He said. Andrea's answer was unhurried, precise, and required no elaboration. The house sold, proceeds divided equally 3 ways. The savings account divided equally, with Damon's $14,000 unpaid loan deducted from his share. Grandmother's pearl earrings. The life insurance benefit, the policy supplemented for 11 years, divided equally among the 3 of us. No legal fees demanded, no damages. No apology required, though the room held the weight of one that would never be offered. Exactly what my mother had promised, in her own voice, 14 months before she died. Nothing more. Renee's attorney called a recess. 40 minutes. When they returned, full agreement. Every item. No negotiation. Damon did not make eye contact when he signed. That was the last time either of them was seen. The certified check arrived on a Thursday morning. Coming home from a night shift, still in scrubs, coffee in hand, moving on autopilot. The particular kind of autopilot that only activates after 12 straight hours on your feet. The mail collected without thinking. Return address from the title company. Sat down on the porch steps and held the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside, a check for $61,400. For precision. Because precision matters here, the Lakewood house sold for $387,000. After real estate fees and the remaining mortgage, net proceeds were $271,000. 3 equal shares, $9,333 each. Damon's $14,000 unpaid loan, deducted from his portion per the agreement. The share of the $47,000 savings account, $15,666. Andrea's legal fees paid from that total. The $61,400 was what remained, clean, documented, and entirely mine. Also in the envelope, wrapped in tissue paper, grandmother's pearl earrings, small and cream-colored, exactly as remembered from childhood, when she would open her jewelry box and let a small hand hold them, and they seemed like the most beautiful things in the world. One earring held up to the October light. The honest answer to what that moment felt like. Not triumph. Not the cinematic surge of hot victory the movies promise. Not clean and complete and warm. Something quieter. Something with more weight than triumph. Closer to the feeling at the end of a punishing shift when the last patient is stable, the chart is finished, and the shoulders can finally come down from where they have been living for the past 12 hours. It was over. Not healed. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. Over. The earrings went on right there on the porch step, still in scrubs, cold coffee in hand, October mountains burning copper in the distance. And the moment was sat with, all of it, for exactly as long as it needed. Renee called once, 3 weeks after the settlement, a voicemail, careful voice, the same careful voice from the day she said the funeral was yesterday. She hoped I was well. The holidays were coming. The kids missed me. No return call was made. Something deserves to be said honestly here, because this story deserves honesty more than it deserves a tidy ending. This is not a reconciliation story. Too many stories like this one end with the wronged person arriving at forgiveness as the destination, the whole arc quietly moving toward reunion, love conquering everything with sufficient patience and grace. Maybe that story exists. It is not this one. This is the story of a woman who spent her adult life giving everything to people who accepted it without gratitude and excluded her without hesitation, and who, one day, simply stopped. Not with a speech, not with a breakdown, not with a single dramatic moment anyone could point to and use against her. She stopped filling the gaps, stopped being available at midnight, stopped making herself smaller so everyone else could feel larger, stopped accepting the role assigned before she was old enough to know she could refuse it. The responsible one, the steady one, the one you call when everything falls apart, the one you don't bother calling when your mother is dying because she will be fine, she is always fine, she doesn't need what the rest of us need. Here is what is known now that was not known before. Hear it carefully, because it took 38 years to learn. Families that exploit the strong do it because the strong allow it. Not from weakness, from goodness. From the belief, held somewhere beneath all the contradicting evidence, that enough giving will eventually be met with recognition. That patience will eventually produce gratitude. That someone will finally say, "We see you. We know what you carry. We are grateful." They will not say it. The people who benefit most from reliability are the last to acknowledge it. Acknowledging it would mean admitting what they have taken. So they don't. And you show up anyway. You always have. Why would anything change? until the day something does, until a concrete floor in Nairobi, a Facebook post, a white blanket and closed eyes and a family photograph with one person missing. And something breaks open. Not the heart has been fracturing in small ways for years, but something structural. Some foundational belief about what is owed to people who share blood, simply because they share blood. It cracks. And through the crack, clarity. Cold and clean, almost like relief. Nothing is owed. Nothing was ever owed. Sitting on the porch of a house purchased 8 months ago. Not the Lakewood house. Not any house carrying someone else's history in its walls. A small craftsman bungalow 3 miles from Denver General. Deep covered porch, south-facing garden, a kitchen being slowly and methodically restored. The way most things get done now, carefully, without rushing, each step done right so it doesn't need to be undone later. Grandmother's pearl earrings come out on hard days. When a patient doesn't make it and the floor still needs to be walked back onto. When grief rises without warning, which still happens, which will keep happening. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, it arrives when it arrives. She is missed, the mother she was before whatever was done to her. The kitchen smell, the laugh, the way Simone Elaine sounded when she was proud. That loss is permanent, and it belongs entirely here, separate from, untouched by, what her other children chose to do. Both things are held at once now. The love and the loss, the grief and the clarity, the tenderness for who she was, and the absolute knowledge of what was done in her name. Dana and dinner most Thursdays. Therapy continuing, patients well cared for, garden thriving against reasonable expectation. Last week, a new nurse joined the unit, 24 years old, first ER position, competence that hasn't yet learned it needs protecting. She stayed 40 minutes past shift end to finish a chart perfectly, absorbed 2 extra patients without being asked, carried the weight of everyone around her and smiled doing it. Recognition was immediate. A seat taken beside her in the break room. You are going to be exceptional at this. And there is something nobody told me when I was where you are. She looked up. Learn the difference between giving because you want to and giving because you are afraid of what stops if you don't. One sustains you for 30 years, the other hollows you out, and the people who benefit from the second kind will never tell you which one it is. It is not in their interest. That is yours to figure out. Don't take as long as I did. A quiet moment. How long did it take you? A concrete floor in Nairobi, a Facebook post, a white blanket and closed eyes and a family photograph with one person missing. Long enough? I said. Coffee picked up. Back to work. Some things can only be learned by living them all the way through. But once learned, once paid for in full, with time and money and trust and grief, they belong to you, completely and permanently. And no one, not a sister, not a brother, not a manipulated will, not a family that buried your mother while you were on the other side of the world saving strangers, can ever take that from you. If this story stayed with you, if somewhere in these words you recognized yourself, your family, your silence, your patience that was never returned, then you already know why this channel exists. Every story here is about people who gave too much, waited too long, and finally chose themselves. People who stopped being the family ATM, the emergency contact, the one who always shows up. People who learned, the hard way, that boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. If that is your story too, hit the like button right now. Not for me. As a quiet acknowledgement to yourself that you heard something true today. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone still waiting to be seen by people who will never see them, someone still carrying weight that was never theirs to carry, share this video with them. Send it without a caption. Sometimes the right words at the right moment change everything. Be that moment for someone. Subscribe if you want more. Every week a new story. Real people, real betrayals, real reckonings, and real victories. The quiet kind, the kind that don't make noise but change everything. Hit the bell so you never miss one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. In a world of skips and scrolls and 30-second attention spans, staying for a full story is an act of respect for the person telling it and for yourself. Take care of yourself this week. Set one boundary. Let one thing go. Notice how the air feels different after. See you next time.